Hello, welcome to our RecapPlus channel with me Matthew. Today we will watch a recap movie called Backtrack. Released in 2015. This is a spoiler content video, so please turn on the subtitle and let's start the story. The movie begins by introducing our main character, Peter, a therapist in his 30s, who is haunted by nightmares and guilt since the tragic death of his daughter, Evie. He often blames himself for what happened. One night, he hears his wife, Carol, sobbing because of a vivid dream. Fast forward, Peter boards a bus and heads to work, where he serves as a therapist to cope with his own grief. His first patient, Felix, is a senior citizen seemingly trapped in the past. Peter asks him who the US president is, and Felix responds with Ronald Reagan. Peter is baffled and asks for the year, to which Felix says it's 1987. Peter diagnoses Felix with a case of being lost in time. Felix even asks if they've met, to which Peter responds affirmatively, but points out that it was just last week. Next, we see Peter chatting with Duncan, the office matchmaker, who sets him up with a variety of clients, including Felix and many others. Meanwhile, Peter and Carol are still grieving over the loss of their daughter, Evie, a year ago. Peter fondly remembers the good times with Evie, but a flashback takes a dark turn as he desperately searches for her under a truck. Duncan plays detective and asks Peter what distracted him the day Evie passed away. Peter confesses that he briefly glanced at a store, and when he turned back, Evie was on the ground. Peter continues to go through the motions, tending to patients without truly being present. However, one patient, Erica, brings him back to reality when she questions if she's boring him. Peter reassures her and Erica opens up about feeling invisible. As if things couldn't get any stranger, a passing train startles Peter, and he's about to call it a day when he spots a little girl with a doll in his office. He asks her who she's here to see, but she remains silent, handing him a small purse with her name, Elizabeth Valentine, on it. Peter asks her if she can write, and the pencil on the table starts shaking as if it's dancing. Simultaneously, another train passes by outside, startling Elizabeth. Peter closes the windows, but when he turns around, she's gone. Later that evening, Peter goes through his daughter Evie's belongings and picks up a picture, seemingly seeking answers. The next day, as Peter is leaving his office, he's surprised to find the same doll Elizabeth had left behind. He rushes back into his office, but Elizabeth is already looking out the window. He asks her what she sees, but she suddenly starts choking. In a hurry, Peter grabs some medicine, but when he returns, Elizabeth has vanished without a trace. The following day, Peter retrieves Elizabeth's doll and shows it to Duncan, who remains skeptical, believing Peter may be inventing wild stories. Duncan raises some pertinent questions, such as speculating on Evie's age if she were still alive today, and the significance of Elizabeth Valentine's name. Duncan's skepticism is not unfounded, as the girl's initials are identical to those of Peter's daughter. Upon returning to his office, Peter retrieves Elizabeth's case file and examines the paper she had written on. Opening his desk drawer, he finds the train pass that Elizabeth had given him, which is akin to a train-themed puzzle gradually coming together. That night, Peter, utterly exhausted, accidentally falls asleep on the train. Upon awakening, he is in for a startling revelation. One of his earlier patients, Erica, is right there with him, and the lights suddenly go off, adding a suspenseful twist to the situation. Peter hastily exits the train and, to his amazement, he sees Erica's eerie figure floating in mid-air, resembling a magic show gone horribly wrong. In a state of bewilderment, Peter dives headfirst into research mode to uncover more about Elizabeth Valentine. To his surprise, he discovers that a death certificate has already been issued for her. However, the strangeness doesn't end there. Most of the patients he's seen in the past few days have met their untimely demise, including Felix and Erica. What's even more bewildering is that they all passed away on the same date, July 12, 1987, the exact numbers Elizabeth had scribbled on that piece of paper, creating a cosmic coincidence of epic proportions. Then, a train pulls up by his window, leaving Peter flabbergasted as he observes all his patients now confirmed to be deceased on board, like a surreal ghost train embarking on a one-way journey to the great beyond. Later on, Peter confides in Duncan, revealing everything and presenting him with a grim patient list. Peter admits he's questioning his own sanity, as there are just too many loose ends. Duncan, curious and intrigued, asks Peter to explain what doesn't add up. In a surprising twist, as Peter takes a closer look at the mirror right in front of him, he has an epiphany: Duncan is nowhere to be seen. It turns out that Duncan was a figment of his imagination all along. With his investigative instincts in high gear, Peter delves deeper, attempting to find the common thread among his patients. He connects the dots and stumbles upon a bizarre coincidence. They all have ties to False Creek, the rail control station in his hometown where he grew up, and where a tragic accident occurred 30 years ago. This revelation leaves Peter questioning his own sanity and the blurred lines between reality and illusion. The next day, Peter boards a train and embarks on a journey to his hometown, where his father, William, resides. When he arrives at his dad's doorstep and rings the doorbell, William is understandably puzzled by Peter's unexpected visit. Peter tries to lighten the mood with a joke, suggesting that maybe William should be the shrink here, but his father, a retired cop, quickly sets the record straight. Peter reminds his dad that he's retired as well, adding a touch of playful banter to the conversation. In a reflective moment, Peter heads to his old room and opens the closet door, pulling out a dusty old box. Inside, he finds an ancient newspaper and stares at it as if it holds the secrets of the universe. Afterward, he leaves the house and arrives at a bar, where he approaches a man named Barry. As it turns out, Barry is an old childhood buddy, and they reconnect like old friends. Barry learns about Peter's daughter, which evokes sympathy for him. Peter confides in Barry, revealing that Evie's passing has prompted him to reminisce about their shared history and discuss the events of 1987. However, Barry reminds him of their agreement never to bring up that topic. Peter brings up the fact that people died when they were youngsters, leaving Barry puzzled as to why Peter is revisiting this after all these years. Barry assumes Peter might want to involve the police, prompting Peter to attempt an explanation about seeing apparitions. Unfortunately, this only further infuriates Barry, who sharply instructs Peter to maintain his distance and dramatically exits the bar. Meanwhile, in Peter's father's house, William enters Peter's room and notices the newspaper Peter left on his bed. Later on, we observe Peter strolling along the railway tracks, where he begins to witness scenes from his teenage years unfold before him. He observes two 14-year-old boys, who are none other than Peter and Barry, riding bicycles along the tracks. Eventually, they come to a halt and leave their bikes on the tracks. Barry mentions that his older brother informed him it's a popular spot for romantic encounters, so they hide behind a rock to discreetly observe couples in amorous situations. Suddenly, they hear what appears to be a woman's moan or cry. Out of nowhere, a distant train horn sounds, and they realize they've left their bikes on the track. Peter makes an attempt to reach their bikes, but the train is moving too swiftly. In the end, the train derails and crashes, resulting in the unfortunate demise of all the passengers. Young Peter approaches the train wreck and recognizes some of the passengers as individuals he had conversed with previously, including Felix and Erica. Shockingly, he even spots Elizabeth Valentine inside the train. The flashback concludes, and Peter begins to depart, but once again, he spots Elizabeth Valentine. Suddenly, Felix emerges from behind with a bloodied face, looming over Peter until his bloodied visage drips onto Peter's face, snapping him back to reality. The following day, Barry is at the railway station. Meanwhile, Peter eventually makes a decision to go to the police station and make a confession. However, he fabricates the story and informs the female police officer, Barbara, that he is solely responsible for the train derailment. Barbara inquires whether he had ever discussed it with his father, who held the position of sergeant at the time, to which Peter responds negatively. The upset police officer steps aside briefly to get some water, struggling to hold back tears during this tough moment. Peter learns the painful truth that one of the patients he spoke with, Erica, was also a victim of the train accident. What's more, Barbara, the cop, discloses that she is Erica's daughter. Feeling sorry, Peter sincerely apologizes, and Barbara appreciates his honesty, assuring him she will make an official report. Barbara then tells Peter that his father reached out to her right after the train accident and was very kind, which motivated her to become a police officer. When Peter gets back home, he hears a noise from his room and investigates. Suddenly, he starts to hear Elizabeth humming, and as he enters his closet, the door slams shut behind him, and strange croaking sounds fill the air. Out of nowhere, Elizabeth jumps at him, screaming. Moments later, Peter wakes up to find Duncan shining a flashlight at him. Peter assures Duncan that he's told the truth and put the matter to rest. Duncan questions why they are still troubled by these events. He dismisses the idea that two small bikes could derail a train, suggesting that Peter's mind is distorting the truth because it's too hard to accept. Duncan also points out that Peter can't even remember how his daughter died. Peter then recalls the day Evie passed away, remembering what distracted him, a toy train station. With this realization, he wakes up. Meanwhile, Barbara goes through case files from the 1987 train wreck and finds a photo showing William, Peter's father, at the accident scene. Strangely, a young Peter is also in the picture. Later that day, Peter returns to the railway tracks, determined to remember the events of that night. He recalls running through the woods and seeing a hand operating the controls in the signal box. As this memory comes back to him, he approaches the signal box by the tracks. Going up the stairs, he stands before the door, only to find Barry's lifeless body hanging from the ceiling. When the police arrive, Peter has no choice but to admit to Barbara that Barry also left his bike on the railway tracks. Meanwhile, one of the police officers inside the signal box discovers a badge on the floor. Back at home, Peter examines the newspaper more closely and finds out that Elizabeth Valentine had gone missing. Before the accident, this triggers a memory of seeing Elizabeth running in the woods. At the police station, the officer who found the badge hands it over to Barbara just before Peter shows up. He expresses his suspicion that Elizabeth wasn't on the train because he distinctly remembers seeing her running away from a car right before the accident. Barbara questions Peter about how he knows what Elizabeth looks like. In response, Peter reveals that he has the unique ability to see the ghosts of the train accident victims. He seeks Barbara's assistance in dealing with these spectral matters. Noticing Barbara's skeptical expression, Peter tries to describe Elizabeth's mother, Erica. He mentions her British accent and her nickname, Benny, leaving the cop bewildered. She suggests that Peter might as well head home since his descriptions aren't exactly helping solve the case. However, as Peter enters his car, he discovers Elizabeth sitting in the passenger seat. Instead of driving straight home, he takes a detour into the woods where he remembers encountering her. Amidst the wilderness, he stops the car and implores invisible Elizabeth to unveil the events of that fateful night. Suddenly, an unseen force strikes the car window, and when Peter looks ahead, he spots Elizabeth. She signals for him to follow, and he dutifully obeys. Back at the police station, Barbara re-examines the badge given to her by the officer. She notices that it bears the same school name that Elizabeth attended. This prompts her to hurry and retrieve Elizabeth's case file. Upon inspection, she discovered that the case had been closed. Simultaneously, Peter continues to trail Elizabeth until he spots the railway signal box in the distance. Meanwhile, Barbara arrives at William's house and requests a conversation. He graciously invites her in. Barbara mentions that she obtained his old report regarding the train crash. William hints that she might be taking the matter too personally due to her mother's loss. However, Barbara raises doubts about Peter's account, specifically the claim that 2 bikes were accidentally left on the train track. She points out that Oakstone Road was entirely blocked by wreckage, making it impossible to pass through. The only way William could have reached the tracks was if he arrived at the scene before the accident. Barbara then presents the badge found in the signal box, confirming it belongs to Elizabeth Valentine, a missing schoolgirl. William had overseen Elizabeth's case and had closed it after discovering her body in the wreckage. However, the cause of her death remained inconclusive. Meanwhile, at the signal box, Peter finally recalls the precise sequence of events from that night. He witnessed a girl fleeing from a car. When young Peter hears a scream coming from the signal box, he decides to investigate the commotion. To his surprise, Peter witnesses an absurdly dramatic scene, Elizabeth being choked in, let's just say, some highly questionable consensual sword fighting. This results in Elizabeth accidentally pulling a lever, causing the train to take an unexpected detour off the tracks. Following this chaotic derailment, William decides that the next logical step is to commit a crime more severe than derailing a train. He murders Elizabeth and cleverly stashes her lifeless body amidst the train wreckage. Young Peter, with a front row seat to this circus of events, is the unfortunate witness to it all. Meanwhile, back at William's house, Barbara decides to hang around for Peter's arrival. William, in an attempt to be a gracious host, offers her a cup of tea, but she's not buying it, suspecting some foul play. Barbara gets ready to draw her gun just in case, and lo and behold, William decides it's the perfect moment to introduce her to his impressive headbanging skills. With Barbara now unconscious, William takes the opportunity to give her a grand tour of his garage, complete with a guided trunk experience. As fate would have it, Peter arrives on the scene just in time to witness his dad's unexpected career move. He bravely confronts William, demanding answers and exposing his dark secrets. When William whips out a gun and orders Peter into the garage, Peter complies, but not before delivering some guilt-inducing one-liners. Things take a turn when Peter tries to wrestle with William, but alas, it seems the tool on the floor has other ideas, and Peter ends up taking an involuntary nap. Before the break of dawn the next morning, William embarks on a spontaneous road trip with Barbara in the trunk and Peter in the back seat. However, this adventure takes an unexpected turn when William spots Elizabeth in the middle of the road. The steering wheel becomes an unwilling dance partner, and the car ends up in a precarious position on the rail tracks. Panic sets in as the car's doors lock themselves, leaving William in a desperate struggle to exit. Mirrors suddenly start revealing horrific Elizabeth sightings, and the distant train horn adds a touch of urgency. Peter awakens just in the nick of time, ready to break windows and take names. After some heroic gunfire, Barbara is freed from the trunk. But when William attempts an escape, Elizabeth makes a dramatic reappearance. Peter witnesses a spectral reunion of accident victims, and as they slowly vanish, he gets ready to bid adieu. As Peter prepares to make his exit, he has one final encounter with Elizabeth Valentine, who this time looks oddly peaceful as she takes a leisurely stroll away. Days later, we find Peter enjoying a serene beach day with Evie, who plants a loving peck on his forehead before gracefully wading into the ocean, finally at peace and moving on from this roller coaster of a story. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. You can also click on the videos on your screen to watch more interesting videos. And please share your thoughts about today's video in the comments down below. Lastly, always remember to stay safe and stay healthy. See you in the next video.